Welcome to A Scrap Life, a podcast solely focused on the hustlers, grinders, operators, and business owners who live and breathe the scrap metal industry every day. We are the original recyclers. No suits required, just guts and hard work. Here is your host, Brett Eckhart.
Another episode. Every time I get to do one of these podcasts, it always comes via a different way. Sometimes I meet somebody at a show, an event or Israel event, Scrap Expo or something. I'm like, hey, man, we got a lot in common. Let's sit down and shoot the shit. And then sometimes people just get introduced to me like, hey, you need to talk to this guy or this gal because they got a good story. They're worth talking to. You'd like them. So Jennifer Betts introduced me via kind of text and email to Cliff Nance with the Tungco group. And she goes, hey, you got to talk to him. I think you guys will hit it off. And so here we are. I took her advice, much like I tell everybody else, like there's some people out there's advice worth taking. There's some people out there advice that's worth passing on. And so I got Cliff to sit down and shoot the shit with me on this episode. He's out in Kentucky, so a little far away from Idaho, but thanks for sitting down, man. Thanks for taking the time right before Thanksgiving.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. It's an honor to be on here. And Jennifer, anything she recommends, it's probably a good idea we take that advice.
She knows her shit. And I think there's so many people out there trying to sell you on something or do something. And for me, there's very few people I'll really listen to. And I'm just like, yeah, whatever. Like I like doing shit my own way. I think it's just probably the entrepreneur mind at work. Like I kind of figure like I can figure it out. I could do it my own way. But then there's certain people I'm like, oh, I'll take your advice. But so speaking of entrepreneurship, I didn't know a lot about the Tungco group, Tungco in general. And, you were just kind of filling me in. But man, I'd love to just kind of let's speak to the fact that we have two dads that were hustlers, right? I feel like without going too deep, without knowing you super well, I feel like you would probably agree that probably the reason that you and I are sitting here with this opportunity today is that we both had dads that had a little bit of hustle to them or a lot of it. So
yeah, 100%.
Let's kind of hear about how you guys got started. And I think I've told enough about my dad over the years, but I want to hear about yours. I want to hear how Tungco got started and kind of what you guys are about.
Yeah, man. Hustle is definitely part of our culture. It was something that's been put in me ever since I was a kid. It's key to us today. My father started the business in 1969, really just to scrounge up some money for college. We're in the heart of the coal field here, and tungsten carbide is critical to mining. And back then, recycling wasn't as sexy as it is today. ESG wasn't even a thing. Nobody really cared about recycling at all. And he saw an opportunity there to make a little bit of money and ended up finding out that he could make quite a bit of money and actually turn that into a business. He probably made a little bit too much because he ended up not finishing college. And his sophomore year at UK, he was like, man, what am I doing sitting here studying? I could be making some money back home.
Yeah.
And so he bailed on UK and came home and built a business from the ground up. And today we're a group of global companies. We have about 7 total divisions that handle anything from tungsten carbide to high-speed alloys. If you look at my toboggan, we even have a ammunitions company now, and very, very diversified. And
so tell me what makes up the 7 companies. So if somebody sees one, they'll know that's kind of part of your guys' group.
Yeah. So Tungco is the parent company, and as you referred to it as the Tungco group, we have Tungco powder. The powders division does exactly what it says. Anything that's, whether it's a scrap swarf or a tungsten dry powder, the powder division takes care of that. We have another group called 74 Alloys. 74 is the atomic number of tungsten. So that's kind of how we came up with that secondary division. And really the reason why we came up with that is because in the scrap business, you have a lot of people that tend to hone in on a particular category that they want to focus on. So you have your stainless guys, you have your copper guys, your iron guys, and from a volume perspective, tungsten at high speed is really small. We're not talking about train loads of material. In fact, if we're talking about tungsten carbide or just tungsten in general, the global consumption is only about 100,000 tons for the year. That's it.
Yeah.
And that's worldwide. So that's a pretty small number when you're talking about some of the numbers that you see in stainless, nickel, and aluminum, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So what we ended up having is in our supply chain, people would have these other tungsten bearing alloys that we weren't really focused on. And we couldn't really help them with it because it just wasn't our cup of tea. So in trying to be more supplier obsessed, where we could, be a better, we could be a better customer for them, really. We were like, all right, well, let's run with this. Let's start taking a deep dive into it and see if we can help them out, help them make a little bit of money, and maybe we make a little bit along the way.
Okay.
And so we dove into that in 2014. And now, since then, we've actually acquired a company in Europe that specializes in high-speed steels. We actually sell direct into the melters there. And it's been a really good thing for us. I mean, we've been able to help our suppliers with their supply chain, and we all made a little bit of money on it as well. So that was really exciting. Then we also have like what we call our finished products division. So we're actually taking the scrap all the way through the food chain to a finished product. So soup to nuts all the way.
Then are you selling that finished product are you guys actually then distributing that finished product?
Yeah, so we definitely are. So we have a company called Lineage Metallurgical out of Houston, Texas, and they take care of all of our finished products. So like we have one particular product where we're actually able to crush the tungsten scrap. So anybody that's been in scrap long enough, you've seen some tungsten carbide inserts or rounds, stuff like that. So we crush it, and it pretty much ends up looking like, you remember rock candy when you were a kid, like you go in Cracker Barrel somewhere and it's like rock candy on a stick. That's about what it looks like.
Okay.
And it's used in wear applications. So again, back to mining and construction, anything that's engaged in wear, they'll coat these steel parts with this tungsten grit, and they can enhance the life sometimes by like 10 times. And so that really helps with their downtime, but that's getting in the weeds a little bit. So we have that type of thing, but then we also have it where we will recycle the product all the way back to a powder state. And in Houston, we actually make a tungsten thermal spray, which a thermal spray is essentially like a paint gun, except it's through a thermal arc, and you can coat just about any type of metal with a tungsten coating. It's used heavily in aerospace. So like landing gears, the blades on jet engines, anything that's high heat or high wear, but is when we're talking about hundreds of thousands of tolerance. That's where thermal sprays will come in.
But they probably want to keep it light, right? So they want the base to be light, but they want the wear of something that's probably usually more dense and heavier, correct?
Yeah, correct. So like when you're sitting in an airplane and you look over and see the airplane beside you, and you look at the landing gear and you see the hydraulic in that, well, like a fork truck hydraulic is the chrome coating that's on that is not as high value as what's on an airplane, because obviously airplanes are carrying passengers. The specs on that are much tighter. So you think you're looking at just a chrome coating when you see a landing gear, but you're actually looking at tungsten. That's a tungsten coating that's in there, because you're getting that constant repetition, and the tolerances are like super, super tight.
That's probably one of the coolest things about our industry that I like, that I've kind of noticed over the years and talking to different people. And I get kind of in my own kind of my own shadow or my own just kind of wheelhouse where I don't even look outside and know. I mean, I'm in the industry, right? I feel like I'm as bad as balls deep as anybody. And even
Yeah.
there's certain things that I run across like that right there. You just told me I didn't know that. And I feel like I'm fairly knowledgeable about what's what and who's who in the
Yeah.
zoo, and that's something that you just, there's so many applications of the stuff that we're doing on the recycling side that people are like, oh, you guys are involved in that. Yeah. We know
Yeah.
how that works, or that's our
Yeah.
product, or we deal with that product and that's how that's made, type of deal. So that's super
Yeah.
interesting. I did not know that at all. It makes sense though. I mean, 100%, because they're also trying to keep it light, right? There's a certain amount of like weight that they're trying to, keep tolerances
Yeah.
on, so they can pack more people, more bags, more shit, and still be durable enough to last for years.
Yep. Yeah. So it's when it comes to tungsten, I mean, anything that you think about manufacturing wise,
Yeah.
the world looks really, really different without tungsten carbide to be able to help facilitate a lot of the proper efficiencies.
Okay.
It's a real game changer.
So did you grow up in the business, Cliff? I mean, how did you find a love for it during your childhood, after? I mean, where is your evolution in this process? Where did it come from?
Yeah, I mean, this is pretty much all I've ever known. I found a love for entrepreneurship very at a very young age. So my pops told me when I was 13, he was like, "Hey, I assume you want a car whenever you turn 16." I'm like, "Yeah, for sure." He's like, "Well, I just wanted to give you a heads up that, if that's what you want, you're going to have to pay for it."
Yeah. Love it.
100%. And I'm like, okay, all right. And he
Yeah.
was like, I'll give you the means to make the money, but you're going to do it. So basically he kind of got me tracking after this product that he knew he had discovered that wasn't really being recycled all that much.
Uh-huh.
And he gave me one contact, like one, that's
That's
it.
awesome.
And was like, okay, go get it. The rest is up to you. And so, I mean, really, that's it. He really didn't give me much else. And I was actually watching the Dale Jr. Podcast the other day, and he was telling the story about how his dad, Dale Sr., never told him anything about racing until he got to Cup. And in my mind, I'm like, oh my God, that's my dad. Like he, until I actually became an adult and we were like working together, that's the first time I really remember him sitting down and giving me some real advice. Up until then, he was just like making me dig it out and prove it.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it was intentional or accidental or what, but I don't know. It seems like it's working.
No,
I'm
I
not
think
done
it's
yet, but
important. Yeah. And good for him. I think there's so many people I mean, in our circles or our culture where, they came from not much, right? And so it's really difficult. I mean, I remember growing up and I've told my kids these stories. I'm like, man, it was a fucking struggle for us, right? I mean, we battled every day and we didn't have a lot. But we battled every day. And so I mean, you can't like fully replace that hunger into your own kids that you had
right.
growing up when you didn't have a lot, but you try and give them lessons, right? So he kind of gave you the forethought, if you're going to want a car, you're going to have to figure it out. I'm going to give you the ability if you can figure it out. And here's an opportunity. And I was just having this conversation at our dinner table. I don't know if you have kids. I've got a 14-year-old and a 10-year-old, both boys. And my 14-year-old wants a cell phone. And most people just go buy him a cell phone. I said, motherfucker,
Yep.
I'm not buying you. I said, I'm not buying you a phone because you want a phone so bad. I'd be like, that taste of wanting something that bad, I
Yeah.
want you to figure out whatever you got to do to get that thing, right? And I think
Yeah.
if our ability to teach our kids that want is a good thing, don't ever take that want for being bad. Take that
Right.
want and then figure out how to turn that into something, right? So I'm like, I go to work every day. You're more than welcome to get in the truck. Like they got this week off. I'm like, you can get in the truck with me and we'll take off. We'll be back. You know, you can come to
Yep.
work or you can go to McDonald's or the dollar store or whatever down the road. Like you have the option, right?
Yeah.
But if you think I'm going to just give it to you, then I'm doing you a disservice. I'm doing you a disservice as a dad. I'm doing you a disservice down the road. You're going to look back and you're going to thank me for it. You may not right now. You might be like, well, my friend gets this and my friend gets that. But as a dad, your dad was right, man. He hit the nail
Yeah.
on the head. And I think,
Yeah.
I don't know if you have kids, but I would assume you probably are going to do the same thing.
Yeah. I have an 18-year-old that just started college
Okay.
at Belmont in Nashville, son, and a 13-year-old daughter. And yeah, I mean, like you said, I was similar to you. We didn't really have a lot. I think, most of what my dad had at that time was probably tied up in the business.
Yeah.
So we certainly didn't live in the lap of luxury.
Uh-huh.
Um, I remember he made my mom drive this fucking van forever. Like, and when I say van, this is when vans were real vans, like,
Yeah.
the big captain's chairs that spin all the way around. But we kept that van long enough. We put 2 engines in it and the big, huge ass sliding door. Like you had to be careful because if you slid it too far back, the some bitch would just slide. It just slide all the way off. And you'd have to pick the whole door up and put it back. Like my kids can't appreciate that. Like there's no way. I
No.
mean, my daughter gets dropped off in a Bentley each day. Like there's no, you know, and I tell her on a regular basis, I'm like, you realize this is not normal.
Yeah.
Like it's not normal for that to happen. And, I don't know how we, teach value at that level. But it's definitely more of an uphill climb for me and you to be able to put that same kind of hunger in our kids than it was our parents, because it's just what we knew. You're either going
Yeah.
to do this or not.
Yeah.
Their situations are a little bit different, so it's tougher to replicate that.
I usually end this conversation this way, but we're this deep now, so I'm gonna get right to the point. Um, I'm curious, like while we're on the kids topic and whatnot, do you have visions of your kids being in the business with you down the road, or do you feel like that you want them to go do something different? Because I have my own thoughts about this topic, but
Yeah, so my son says he wants to run the business. He is entrepreneurial. I'll give him this. I offered him the same deal that my dad offered me. And the brother, by the time he bought his car, had saved almost 30 grand in the bank. So he's not scared of work.
good.
He
That's
he
awesome.
loves making money. I mean, this is probably too much information, but he had a little nest egg that he wanted to invest, and I introduced him to my investment group, and I said, hey, I'm not going to get involved with this. You go do it. And he's took $15,000 and turned it into like almost $40,000 in a year and a half.
Awesome.
So, when I look at that and he says he wants to run the company, I'm like, I might need to give you the keys right now. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it goes
so
back to its different type of lessons, right? Like you're teaching them lessons. Like, you didn't have that opportunity, that type of, an investment group or people to, access to at that age. But the lesson is similar, right? Like you can take, XYZ amount and turn into this if you're willing to do the work. And I think
yeah,
the numbers, the zeros might be different, but I think the concept and the lesson is the same, right? Maybe
yeah.
it's done a little differently.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head when we started this conversation. If we can teach our kids hustle, I mean, even if we lose everything tomorrow, they're going to come back with something,
Yeah.
because they understand the art of hustle. And I think it's either something you've got or you don't. And I do feel like my son has that. Now, the one thing that I have laid out for him is I've said, look, you and I share the same last name, but that's not a pass. Like, you have to earn your way through the ranks. You have to earn, influence with the team. I'm not going to be like, hey, here's my son and he's your new blah, 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 in finance or logistics or whatever. Like, you've got to create an atmosphere around you where people are like, hey, if Evan comes in this summer, can he work in my department? Like, that's that's what you need to be creating around yourself. And if you hustle, you'll do that. But if you're the guy that nobody wants, you ain't going to be the boss one day.
No.
But so I put that in his lap. I don't try to cultivate that for him. It's up to him. And
but it sounds like he's got interest. So that's always, it's always kind of refreshing, because I talked to a bunch of different people in our situations, as owners, entrepreneurs, and I get varying, results, right? Some people are, yeah, they're already in, they're going. Some people are like, fuck no, they're out. Like, I don't, and I edge on the side of like, I'm kind of indifferent in the fact that I love it, right? So like, for me to sit down, do what I do, have the conversations like this, pick people's brains and like say, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? Like,
right.
I'm in my element, right? So
yeah.
So, but I don't expect that to be everybody's element. I don't expect that to be yours, as my son. You got to go find your thing. And if it so happens to be that it's one of the businesses that we've started and built and done, great. If not, I could sell it just as easy as I bought it and built it, right? Probably easier than the build and the buy. It's probably a lot easier.
The sale is definitely way easier for sure.
Yeah. So I said, so trust me, like, and nothing here that I've built or done, like, this is all shit that I've enjoyed, and trust me, I'll watch it go away, and don't feel obligated. Like, it is what it is,
Yep.
So that's good. So your dad is not active in the business anymore, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
And
He is the chairman of our board.
Okay.
But he's the guy who he'll come in once every couple of weeks and walk the hallways, say hello, and then he's out.
Good. There you go. There you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, and he retired, I guess, other than the chairman side. You said, what year was that?
I would say he probably fully retired about 5 years ago.
Okay.
So probably about 2018, right before COVID. I became president in 2014 and was CEO about 2016, 17. And that's at that juncture when I became CEO, he was pretty much like, he would come in, he still had an office and he'd come in, he'd be like, hey, I'm here if you need me.
Yeah.
But it just got to the point where he was like, hey, I'm not doing anything, so I'm not coming in.
Yeah.
Okay.
So was your dad, did he give you, I mean, I've heard it said before, did he give you like a lot of freedom to run, to do things as you wished? I mean, were you able to kind of bring your ideas to the table and I guess how much of the expansion is because you were there and as a young guy ready to push the envelope and go hard, and how much it was just natural and just kind of part of where the business needed to go? Without bragging or whatever, I don't want you to put you on a spot, but I'm just kind of curious, like when did you see your most growth as a company?
Yeah, no. So I took over in 2014 and we doubled from 2014 to 2020.
Okay.
But it was kind of like sitting on a powder keg. So you have to think about the fact that when I took up, so we celebrated 50 years in 2019. So when I took over, we were at about that 42 to 43 year mark, but my dad kind of already had one eye on retirement,
Mm-hmm.
so like the way he viewed risk and the way I viewed risk was not the same. Like I'm a caged lion, like I'm pacing. Like, just get out of my way, let me go. And once he said, "Hey, here's the keys," he got out of the way. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I tried to run as much as I could by him. There were honestly some things that I knew he would be way too risk averse on. So I'm like, I'm gonna go for forgiveness over permission.
Yeah.
And so there was certainly a few of those, but I can't. I mean, I'm sure somewhere there in those years, there was probably one or two things where we got sideways on that he was like, "We're not doing that." But I can't, I can't really remember it. So, if you say that, hey, it's a fact that we did double from 14 to 2020, but it was right for the picking, so it was
Yeah.
all the hard work had been done. And I'm not belittling anything that the team that I brought in that they did. I mean, everybody hustled, busted their butts, and really, really worked to make shit happen. But there was definitely some farming, a lot of farming that had been done.
A lot of tree
That made
planting.
it pop.
A lot of
Yeah,
tree
yeah.
planting, a lot of roots pretty deep down in, and I tell people all the time, like, when I started in 04, we just had our main yard in Caldwell and a little feeder yard that we don't have anymore. And that's what we had. Our pipe yard was in the same spot, our trucking, we were all in one area, right? And it was a combination of me bringing in people my age, 23 years old, 24 years old, 25. And we just, as the years grew, just all these guys that were just ready to we compete, right? We're competitive.
Yeah.
We're all team sports guys. Like, we were just, like you said, caged animals that were like just every day, like, let's at it. But we wouldn't have had that capability if we didn't have like the resources over the previous, say, 30 something years, right?
Yeah.
In place, the facility, the ability to, the trucking capacity or whatever that is, you could start like the roots down in the dirt to build that are going to bear the fruit. And I think that, like, it's hard to people say, "Oh, when I came in, we doubled." Well, or we built, we got now 8 yards and we got this business and we got that and we got this, or you're like, but the reason you had even the ability to do that is the roots were set pretty deep. And so you could build on it, or the foundation was tight, or whatever analogy you want to use. But it still takes both, right? It takes the roots in the ground, and then it takes that next generation to show up and show out. Like, show up and fucking do the work and build it out. And I think it takes both if you really want to grow.
Yeah. And another thing, anybody watching or listening, if you got kids in the business, one thing that really helped me probably excel the fastest was before I actually took over the entire range of companies, we actually went out and started a side business together. Well, that today is our powder division.
Mm-hmm.
But what we were able to do was we went out and started that, and he could give me the keys to that without risking the farm.
Yeah.
And like, I was the president of that division starting in 2009. And me and my best friend, Ryan Sizemore, we worked on that together. But like, I had to do, he was like, "Here you go," Dad was. And so that meant, managing the line of credit, all the tax implications. He was hands off.
Mm-hmm.
If I asked for something, he would do it. So there was you can know the hustle and you can know how to buy and sell and do this and that. But when you got to go to the bank and say, "Hey, I need this many million in a line of credit," and figure out how all those pieces work, deal with the attorneys and CPAs, that adds a whole new layer that you don't really understand until you sit in the seat. And so
it's
that
like
was
it's like AAA baseball or AA baseball before you get to the major leagues, like, right? I mean, there's a certain amount of that, game time experience that you were acquiring right there.
100%. So I did that. I started that in 2009. So I'd done that for almost 5 years before he was like, hey, here's the group. But one thing that was awesome was my buddy and I, that business, by 2013, so the year before I took over, we actually netted as much as the group through that one. So I think that was like, okay, for my pops, that was like, oh, these kids can do it,
Yeah.
they can, I can give them what I've worked for my entire life, and they're not just going to blow it on Lambos and whatever,
Yeah. No, that's a great idea. That's something that I think that hopefully my goal with doing this podcast, right, is I love like meeting people, like networking and trying to understand how people built what they built. And because I'm always going to get ideas and thoughts, and hopefully other people do too, right? But I've been hatching on this idea for a while now. So I writing a book, right? And the title of the book is Generational Courage Over Generational Wealth. Because I'm trying to encourage people to take the risk, right? I'm trying to encourage people to have the courage to try. And because I think that's where your greatest like amount of growth comes from, is your willingness to fucking try something. Like not everything that we do, I'm sure you can speak to this as well, that is going to be successful. Like I've had a few failed businesses, right? I'd like to
For
think
sure.
I've had more wins than losses. I'd like to think I've done a little, better than I have worse, but it doesn't mean I haven't taken my lumps.
Yep.
But if you just have the willingness or the courage to try, like you're going to be so much happier and so much farther in life than everybody else that's so fucking scared of their own shadow. And
Yeah,
if I can
100%.
impart anything on my kids, like that's it. And I would assume that's kind of what your dad, and my dad did that for me. He gave me the bandwidth within reason. We had our Orange County chopper days where like it was a father son, like we didn't quite break the fucking door down, but there was some like heated moments for sure, right?
But you thought about it.
Yeah, there was times we thought, but there was that dynamic, and I'm assuming, just probably the nature of the beast for you as well. Like there's some headbutting going on, but at the end of the day, you wanted the same thing. There was just different ways to get there. I feel like,
Yeah.
But your dad imparted that in you.
Yeah, and you talk about the courage thing, like the gentleman who takes care of our finances, our finance director, he and I went to a class at Harvard back in the spring on generational wealth. And the perspective from various people on what it means to leave generational wealth. Like I told him, like I left that class and I'm like, I was disturbed because, you leave it and you get this feeling that people like are trying to establish aristocracy, like I want to make sure my 10th, my G10 is still uber wealthy. Like, I don't give a shit about that. Like,
Neither do I.
Like what I want to know is G10 going to be adding to society? Or, I don't care what the lifestyle they get to live. And so he and I came back from that and we're like, all right, well, how, talking about this, what's now normal for people who live a little bit more affluent life or successful life, however you want to measure that. So I came back and I told my pops, I said, hey, look, here's the deal. This is what I think for generations moving forward. We call it, and I don't remember who said this in the class. So this is not my line, but this is what I'm going with.
Yeah.
Is what we're going to give the next generation, what we're going to promise is a suitcase and an education. So I'm going to get you some ballin' suitcases for you to travel in, because I want you to see the world, and I'm going to give you an education, and that's it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
The rest the rest is up to you. Like, why do I need to give you anything else? Because if you look at society in general today, I mean, if you're willing to pay for somebody's education at any school that they can get into, and they leave school with no debt, I mean, they're that in of itself, they're light years ahead of a lot of other students.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I'm going with. Like, that's what I'm telling my kids. Don't expect anything else. I'm not saying I won't give you anything else, but I'm telling you, don't expect it.
Yeah,
If
and
you
I
get
think
it, it's going to be a surprise.
1000%. I think it's you're setting the expectation where it should be, and I want my kids to want to come home and see me because they love me, not because they want something from me, right? And I want that. And this is back to my cell phone conversation at the dinner table last night. I said, son, the reason I want you to buy your phone is then when you're not looking at me, like waiting for me to shut it down, waiting for me to do this, waiting for me to do that, because then you're going to resent me. And I want you to want to come see me, right? Because
100%.
not because of what I can give you, but because you built it on your own, you built your own foundation, and then now you can do whatever you want to do, however you want to do it. And
right.
within legal parameters, like,
fact.
and as long as your mom says it's okay, then we're good, but I feel like that's how you build, that to me is worth more than money. Like shit.
Yeah. 100%.
Like I said, I can sell it easier than I can build it. The build's the fun part, the sell is what it is. But like I'm out here with my best friends every day building shit. Like find me a better life,
Yeah.
And then I come home and my wife and I build a house. We build what we do, and I think that's the thing. So
my daughter said something the other day. She was referring to something that I own, and she was like referred to we own. And I'm like, oh, I was like, say that again. She was like, yeah, we, and I'm like, no. Dad owns. You get to, but let's be clear, that's Dad's, not yours.
1000%. So back to work. So Tungco. Right. So we're 2020. You guys have doubled in size. And what was the big driver of the double in size? Obviously, we talked about the roots and you guys were sitting on the powder keg, but what enabled you to push the next level, and kind of where were you guys strategically setting up shop that's been advantageous for your customer base?
Yeah, so probably the biggest play in that was we were already in the early 2000s selling into Europe, but we didn't have a European base. So what that meant was like our European customers could use us to supplement their supply, but we couldn't be their go-to just because the lead time was too much. There's too much risk on their part for us to be their raw material provider. So just to kind of unpack, just to double click on that real quick, basically when a lot of times we're out buying raw materials in very small quantities, like LTL type, 1,000 pounds, 5,000, 10,000, but we're only selling in full container loads.
Yeah.
So when our customer receives it in, they receive it in as straight raw material feed. And tungsten is in the Western world is highly intensive in recycling, to the tune most of your major players are looking to go to about a feed rate of 70 to 85% recycled material over primary. So there's, as far as the demand, that's not a problem. The demand was there. We just couldn't get them the supply that they needed in a timely fashion. Okay. So they wouldn't consider us. So we said, all right, well, what if we open shop in Europe? And we just had the conversation with them before we ever took on the risk. And they were like, hey, yeah, we love you guys. We love your product. We love what you do. But you kind of have to be here. So we took on the risk. I hired Marcus Ebecker. He's right outside of Dusseldorf. He's got 25 years in the industry. He's the man. I mean, he knows tungsten inside and out within the European space. And dude, we hit the ground running. And I would say of that growth, if you say, hey, all right, well, this is the doubled rate from that 100%, I bet probably close to 60% of that came from the European. space, just us picking up that business. Because right now, if you look at my sales as a breakdown, I probably do about 55, 45.
Mhm. Domestic
So
versus
yeah,
international. Okay.
yeah. Wait a minute. Is that math right? Yeah, that's right. Or is that 110? It's early.
You're good. You're good.
So
I see where you're going. I see where you're going. It's
yeah,
right though.
but
545.
whenever we close, whenever we started that, we probably only did about 10% if our overall in Europe. So the European space has grown tremendously for us.
Nice.
So that's probably been the biggest. And then we've just had little diversifications, like even our finished products that we touched on at the beginning of the show. That was just a real small portion of our business, and
Yeah.
that's grown to probably 10 to 15% now, and that's continuing to grow.
It's just, I mean, what it is too, it's what it amounts to. The way I look at it is you're just digging down into the value chain farther, right? When you break off and you're looking at powders, or you're looking at, or you're moving up to it through the value chain into the consumption or the finished products. You're saying the value chain is from here to here, right? And you're saying,
Yeah,
okay, we're kind of here on the recycling side. We want to dig a little farther and see where there's more opportunity to gain more material. But at the same time, I want to look up the food chain, value chain, and see where can I actually get my hands on, finished process material, feed that up, and then figure out a way to distribute that. So I think it's any good business, in my opinion, any good businessman or woman, they take what they've got and they did not necessarily say branch out 18 ways sideways, but they just look at their chain and they say, what more can I bring to my customer? That
yeah,
I'm already it's a space I'm in. And how do I kind of take that and grow my business via maybe another product, but it uses, similar resources or
yeah,
similar locations. And I can kind of go from there. It feels like that's kind of what you guys were doing. But then adding other country, you guys felt confident in what you knew, what you need to buy. You knew what the products needed to look like. You knew how to sort. You
yeah,
knew how to find consumers. So it was more just
yeah,
looking for more bandwidth opportunity, looking for more places to buy from.
yeah, 100%. And another thing that we worked really hard on, I think this is key for everybody to keep in mind, is to try to never get in cross purpose with your customer. That's always super important to us. So we would try to find out what are our customers' needs, like what can we do for them to help them be more efficient. And that allowed us to grow our business, but also facilitate a need for our customer, which made us a better supplier. So it kind of became a win-win. I think a lot of times people look at a customer that they deal with and they see a lucrative opportunity and they're like, oh, I'm gonna go after that. And we've had some suppliers that have tried that with us. And it's like, okay, if it, if we're going to go to battle, I'm game. But
Yeah.
we probably should have had this conversation before we ever got there, because I could have helped you make some money, and now we're just going to fight. And as my buddy says, I was here before you got here, and I'll be here after you're gone.
Yeah, exactly. There's
So
a reason why we've been
that's
here for 50 something years, because we've
yeah,
seen this rodeo before, right? And
yeah, exactly,
you
yeah,
know, and I've
yeah.
seen that side. But and when you say cross purpose, that's what you're referring to.
Yeah, it's a legal term where, you're kind of trying to go in the same direction, which causes you to be fighting for the same territory. And that's not really what you want to do. Like you don't want to be having that clash. You want to be like, okay, how can we go hand in hand in this? Because it doesn't matter who you are. You can be Apple, Google, Tesla, whatever. Nobody takes the market at 100%. So
Yeah,
if you already have a great working relationship, it's like find spaces where your customer already wants to grow in, and then help them grow that.
gotcha.
Because nobody that you're going to come to with a real idea of making money and growing their business together, most people aren't going to be like, yeah, no, I'm not interested.
Yeah, yeah. They're because
But
they're trying to grow their business at the same time you're trying to grow yours, right?
yeah, Correct. But if you're the asshole who is like, well, let me do a plant tour and then I'm going to go out and try to copy what you do, okay, let's
Yeah.
see how that works out,
Unless they're like, and I've done this, like, if I'm gonna come tour your plant, right? And I want to see how you do things. And this, like, I kind of relate this back to like our tire business, because this is kind of what was my mindset. I went and toured a few tire plants and I'm at tire processing facilities. I'm like, okay, how you doing it so I don't have to reinvent the wheel? The difference between tires and, let's say, tungsten carbide is tires only travel, a couple hundred miles before you wear off any value. Like,
right.
don't get to go in a container across the ocean, and
Right.
nobody's making good money on that, right?
Right.
So
It's regional, right?
yeah, it's very, very regional. It's very localized. And so there's a more willingness to share what you're doing when it's a very localized product, right? Now, if you have a product of high value, let's say little volume, high value, it can pretty much go about anywhere, even on LTL and still make money. But
Yeah.
I think there's a collaboration that can happen where you're not affecting your market, right? But if I show you what I'm doing and you come and set up shop next door to me, we're gonna have a fucking problem, right? Like,
100%.
problem,
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
I'm willing to say, hey, I want you to, be better. But I'm also more interested in how do I make my customer better.
Yeah.
And like, to your point, that's exactly, how we decided on the tires was what's our customer doing? Oh, they're generating tires, they're a truck shop, they're this, they're that, and they have another need. We could fill that need. At the same time, we still want to buy their scrap, right?
Yeah.
I feel like that's a very similar concept to what you guys have done in the tungsten circle, right?
Yeah.
You found
Yeah.
more needs that your customer is looking for and found a way to fulfill them, which
That's right.
and then in turn makes your relationship stronger.
Yeah. Yeah. Because you're able to help them be more profitable. You're able to help them, be more sustainable in what they're doing. So it becomes a win-win and you just deepen that relationship for sure.
Gotcha. So, I mean, if you had to hang your hat on anything, is that why people should, do business with Tunco over somebody else? Is that the thing?
Yeah. I would say relationship, the very, very top of why people continue to do business with Tunco. One of our main core values is being customer and supplier obsessed. And that's at the heart of everything we do. We're not the trader who is chasing a nickel. Like, that's not our game. Like,
Yeah.
we're in this for the long haul partnership. And it took us a long time to convince our customers of that, because our customers were so used to, this trader mentality that, okay, I'm going to be the guy I'm going to call 3 people and then I'm just going to go with the straight highest bidder. Like, we had to get our customer base. It took us years for them to believe that, when they say, hey, I want 5 truckloads of this, and they give us a forecast for 3, 4, 5, 6 months, and we go ahead and agree on a price, that we're not gonna back up on that, and we're gonna stick to it, even if that means we lose money sometimes.
Yeah.
But what that means is again, our customer understands that we're gonna be there for them. And I'm not just trying to create an inflated price to get an extra nickel or whatever. I'm more interested in the relationship, the long-term part of that. And we also try to reciprocate that on the supplier side. Suppliers never want to hear you say, hey, we're not buying right now, we don't need anything. That's like, they never want to hear that. And my supply team, my procurement team never wants the CEO to say, hey, we gotta chill for just a little bit here.
Yeah.
So we try to always steward our inventory to where we don't have to do that. So it's not, we don't want to be the partner that's like on the gas, off the gas, on the gas, off the gas. Like,
Yeah.
we want to be that reliable partner. We don't always hit that. Like right now, things are a little bit slow. So our supply chain would probably like us to be buying a little bit more than what we're buying. But from a global perspective right now, if you're in raw materials, pretty much everybody's got a little bit higher inventory than what they need to have. And it's just the global dynamic that we're in a post V recovery type global economy. I mean, there's just no way around that. So yeah, to land the plane there, I would say relationships are probably what gets us the furthest.
And going back to, kind of how we started the podcast was that's that 50 something years of doing business, right? You're not in business for 50, what are you guys at 53 years now? 54 years. You're not in business for 54 years because you forgot about the relationship part, or you forgot about, like why does going 65 get you the best fuel mileage versus going 100 and then going 40 and then going 100 and then going 40? And generally, how do you get farther in life? Because you just went 65 and you took the good, the bad. Sometimes you pass people, sometimes they passed you, but at the end of the day, like you still beat them to the spot because you were able to go 65, right? And I think that's being in business for 50 something years. That's being family owned. That's being, and I think when you look, people are starting to become more aware of the traders, right? And I think that there's a trader mentality out there that it's hard for me to get my mind wrapped around because I sell all of our scrap, right? That's just the nature of the beast. I have for a long time. And so I'm dealing with people every day on the sell side. And I try and do business, A, with people I like, but B, people that I think are going to be around a long time. Because I anticipate, we're 52 years now. I anticipate being around a long time, right? So I want someone to consume my scrap. They know what I make. They know the our quality. I want them to be around. And I think that people are they're starting to figure that out. There was a period of time when trading was just, that last penny, that last nickel, and people got hung, and they'll continue to get hung on scrap and it's that consistency that wins in the long run. I truly believe.
Yeah, I agree. I agree 100%. Like, you don't forget when a guy burns you over, a couple pennies. I mean, if somebody's outbidding me by a good percentage, you should go, your guy's not doing his job if he goes with me and I get outbid by percentage points.
Yeah.
But when you're calling every Tom, Dick, and Harry just trying to run the price on me, we ain't gonna forget that.
Exactly.
We're not gonna forget that.
Yeah. Well, man, any words of wisdom you want to impart on anybody listening before we take off?
I don't know if I've got any words of wisdom, but I don't know when this will drop. But it's Thanksgiving tomorrow, so I think the main thing is no matter what, just always remember to be grateful and thankful, love people, and don't be an asshole.
Absolutely. Keep the main thing. I heard said one time, and I feel like that's a good way this time of year to remember why we're out here doing what we're doing.
Yep. And
All
thanks
right,
for the opportunity, man. It's been fun.
Thanks for sitting down, and I do appreciate it. Appreciate your time.